Hey, what's up? Welcome to Jam the Hype Live, where we help Christian urban artists effectively influence our modern culture to live lives transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. My name is George Moss. I'm the host here, and I got my co-host with me from Urban Youth Workers Institute, Creative Director, Cherie. What's going on?
What is up? I am so excited about this episode. Because the guest is one of my best artist friends. I love her. I love her. Like, adore her.
I'm super excited about this conversation as well. I'm getting a chance the first time to meet our guest for today, but I'm really excited about this conversation, mainly because during this kind of pandemic COVID-19 season, I've really felt kind of this creative block. I feel like there's so much uncertainty going on in the world, so much political stuff going on, so much unrest happening, and so much stuff happening on the outside, which is chaotic. It's really hard to be inspired. And I know some artists can use this time and they're way more inspired and they have something to say and they have to get things off their chest. I'm more so like, there's so much chaos going on. I feel like I can't say anything. And you recommended this book and this process a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't really sure about it at first. I kind of like dabbled into it for various reasons. But after I kind of overcome some of those things, I started to actually get to the essence of what it was talking about. And I'm super excited about going through this process. So for the next 12 weeks, we're going to be going down this journey on what's called the Artist Way. The Artist Way is a book, curriculum, course, methodology of kind of getting artists from this blocked state of where they can't really create and getting back to the point where they can connect to the ultimate creator. And that was one of those things in this book where I was like, man, it sounds like ultimate creator and universal. And as a believer, I'm like, well, the ultimate creator, we know who that is. That is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is Yahweh. That is, Jesus. That's who we talk to. So when it's not specifically lined out, you can kind of, I personally can allow that to sort of like block the idea. But in a lot of senses in this world, you take the meat, you spit out the bones, and you kind of navigate with that. So I'm excited about going through this process. I just got my copy from Amazon. So we'll leave a link down in the description below of how to get this process in this book. But you have actually gone, you know Christa, and she's taken so many artists through this process. What has been your experience working with Christa and writing songs and creating together?
Yeah, so first, Christa Wells is our guest today, and we've written several songs together. And I always knew that when I showed up to a writing session with Christa Wells, not only were we going to write a dope song, but we would like finish the song. We would get all the verses, the chorus, the bridge. And she's so dedicated to completing art. So when we begin it, she's in it until that song breathes whatever it's meant to breathe. So we've written in her living room. We've written for days in her living room. She's come out to Chicago when I was in Chicago, and we wrote in my basement. We've written over Zoom, and she's been just an amazing testament to me of someone who truly is an artist, knows her craft, spends time with her craft, is in the flow of her craft. So anytime it's time to get work done, she's in that flow. She doesn't have to try to get in the flow. She lives in that space. So when she asked me a couple weeks ago if I would go with her through this journey, and that's when I brought it to you, George, I'm like, let's all go through this journey. I was like, for sure, I'll go with you on this journey, because you are someone I can follow, because you understand the artist flow. You understand how to stay in a state of creativity.
So, well, I'm excited to have it. Just welcome to the show, Christa Wells, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee. How are you doing, Christa?
I'm doing great. Doing great. I'm so honored, man. I was blushing listening to that affirmation from my friend. Thank you.
I'm just curious as to how did you stumble across the Artist Way and this process of discovering or reconnecting to creativity?
The book itself was given to me years and years ago, and I think I've heard this from a number of people who signed up to do our book club together, is that a number of us have had this book on our shelves and kind of done parts of it, or maybe we flipped through it and read, but didn't actually make ourselves do the tasks. And so that's why I decided I think we need some accountability here. But I don't remember. I think my mom gave me the book a long, long time ago.
Accountability as an artist is one of those things that artists just don't really like responsibility or accountability with things.
Yeah.
But however, when you are accountable to something and you force yourself to create, you've realized that you get into this flow and you are able to create a lot better. So I've experienced that on the very first day. Like, I just got the book yesterday. I was started to read through it, and I just started doing the exercises, and I was like, I've heard about some of this stuff before, especially like in the first chapter, but I had no idea that it's like, oh, this actually, like, literally my first words, and what we're going to get into what's called the morning pages, I wrote, is like, my first words were, I hope this works. And by the and by the end of it, I was like, oh, I get it, why this is this way. So yeah, so I wanted to jump right into the very first chapter. I mean, there's a whole introduction to this book. But for the next 12 weeks, we're going to be going through each chapter one by one. And I wanted to just talk about the very first chapter in this book, which was
Recovering a Sense of Safety.
Yes, Recovering a Sense of Safety. That's the title of this show. I should know this.
Yeah, it's okay. Recovering a Sense of Safety. So what that means, guys, is the first chapter talks about creativity flourishing in an atmosphere of safety and acceptance. And that is the atmosphere you will be building for yourself. If you join us on this, Jam the Hype fam, join us on this. We want you to create a space where you are making a date with yourself to nurture the artist within. And we're going to ask you to really commit to finding time to do that. And in this whole thing, the artist dates, which is again appointments with yourself, reinforce your sense of safety, and they strengthen your contact with a source of benevolence in this world at large. And so, I think right now, back to George's point, it has been hard. There's a lot going on in our world to make priority for creating, because there's all this stuff popping off. There's all these messages hitting. But at the end of the day, are we getting quiet with ourselves to see how we personally, through our art, are called to respond? And Christa, you've been a big part of that in my life. There's been so many things that have been happening, not only just this year, but for the last 3 years. And the last song you and I wrote together, 2 songs, Troubled and Freedom, I had a lot of dates with myself where I knew what I needed to get out, and I couldn't fully get it out on my own. And so I collabed with you, and I flew down to Nashville, and we wrote Troubled and we wrote Freedom together. And now those songs are like so on point for this time. But not only did I have a sense of safety with myself as an artist to come to you and say, here's what I'm thinking, but you created a space for me, a sense of safety as I sat in your living room when you wrote those songs. Where do you think this sense of safety comes from as an artist, with yourself and with one another? Because you've written with a ton of artists. I'm just one little one, but you've written with some big ones. How do you create this sense of safety? How do you do that?
Well, I don't have like a scientific answer, obviously, but I think that it's something that begins with creating it for ourselves, and I grew up moving around a lot. My dad was in the Army, and so I've realized this more just recently, in recent years, that I had a deep sense of unsafety, in my life. Like, I was always the new kid. I never could catch up with the trends or the fashion or the ways I just always felt behind and on the outside. So creativity became my safe space. Like, I could, and in some ways not super healthy, I was escaping a lot, and living in fantasy. But overall, I think it became an integral way of my surviving and thriving in my own life. And so I think what we tend to give to the world, if we are people who are pursuing health and growth, a lot of what we speak and give to the world is what we ourselves needed, right? I mean, that's what I see you doing. You're speaking and giving, and probably this podcast itself was born out of something you guys wished you had had. Know the need because you have felt it. And so I don't know, I think it just, a sense of not belonging was a big part of my early life. And so it's really important to me to create places of belonging for other people.
I think that is so true, because as an artist, I know even doing this podcast and stepping into the role of Jam the Hype, the reason why I was doing it is because I know it was something that I personally needed. Like I knew that I needed leadership and needed leadership skills. So what better way than take the opportunity to be a part of an organization that is working with other leaders and developing other leaders. And as we started to do this podcast, and kind of facing this artist block, I'm like, what better way to unblock my own creativity than to find someone like you and to find a resource like this Artist Way to be able to walk through a process and to be able to walk through it with other people. As I was looking at this idea of a safe place this morning, so Sheree talked about the artist date, and there's kind of two concepts it talks about in the very first chapter. One is the artist date, where you just take yourself away. You can't invite your friends, don't invite your spouse, don't invite nobody else. It's you and sort of this inner creative artist child within you, and take them on a date to spend time with them. And I know for me, I have to take time with my individual children. We have 4, and I want to make sure that I spend time with each one of them to attend to each one of their needs. And I feel like we have to realize we have an inner creative child within that we need to spend time with and connect with intimately. So that's the idea of this artist day. But what was really impactful for me, I haven't taken that artist date just yet, because that's the part that I think is difficult for a lot of people. But what was really interesting is they have an exercise in this book. The first chapter is like called the morning pages. And it's to sit down in the morning and write 3 pages. Just write. It doesn't matter what comes out. It doesn't matter, just to write. And it's not write a song. It's not write a blog. It's just to get the pen moving across the page. And what was so interesting to me is that I remember back in 7th grade, one of my favorite teachers of all time, her name was Miss Stevens. And I had her for creative writing in English. And I hated school. I hated that class because one of the things that we had to do was journal and write 3 pages every week. And she said, write 3 pages. It doesn't have to be, it could be on anything you want. And for her to say, write anything you want to me, that was so annoying, because I'm like, give me some direction. Surely you mean say something, like surely you're getting at something. What am I supposed to write? Anything. That's not a good enough answer for me. So I didn't do the writing for weeks. And I was getting a 0 every week. And one time she just sat me down, like, you're gonna write these 3 pages. And out of frustration, I wrote the most incoherent gibberish that I could think of. Like it made no sense. I just wrote words, 3 pages of just nonsense. And I turned it into her. And she was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I just wanted you to write. And I didn't grasp that concept back then. I was still sort of like, this is so stupid. Why is she having me do that? But then, 20 some odd years later, I'm going through this book the first day and I'm writing, and I had that freedom of just saying, nothing is wrong that comes out. No one's going to critique me. No one's going to criticize me. Everything that I say, I'm going to be at the end of this, and I'm going to turn this into my Father, the Creator, and he's going to be well pleased with it. It's like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. And for the first time, I understood this idea of freedom in writing. And it's an interesting thing because, like, for me as an artist, I'm always second guessing everything. Like I was telling Sheree, like, I'll confess to everybody, I literally write songs sometimes in Excel spreadsheets because I want to make sure that I make each point. And like, I'll write it like I'm outlining an essay, and I'm saying I want to make this point here, and it's a way that it's been done because I've had to force myself to do that. But I haven't felt this freeing sense until I actually spent time doing the morning pages, because it really took a bunny trail from all over the place. So if that's what I experienced on the first day, for someone like you, what's your writing process like? How do you kind of live in that space where you don't critique yourself? You just allow yourself to be free and just write whatever comes out of your heart. How do you do that?
I tell myself that I will get to do that later. Like I'll get to be critical later, but it just has its time. Just like I will get to go to sleep later, just not now, Mm-hmm. And so that's something I really emphasize for myself and for anybody that I'm mentoring is we have to give ourselves room to play and to. Can you guys hear all that noise?
It's
I hear
okay.
it. It's all good.
Loud children. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It's Zoom calls. We all know how it's like.
Uh-huh.
The small house. But yeah, I think it's so crucial. If we want to get to the good stuff, we have to begin with honesty. We have to begin with authenticity, even if it's I think we can censor ourselves for so many different reasons. Sometimes we know our craft and we know what's good and what's good or what's strong and what's not. And we're bringing that into journaling, and journaling is not supposed to be abiding by the rules of the craft, right? But we're just really addicted to this. Things are right and wrong, and it's an A or it's an F, and I think everything good that we create, probably if you guys look at all of your best work ever, it's always come from authenticity, honesty. Like, tell the truth first, and get those true words or pictures, whatever, down, and then later you can go, well, we're going to use it for this purpose, so we need to focus it this way or shape it that way. But I think one of the reasons we hold back is we are afraid of being offensive too, offensive to even ourselves or to anybody who might ever read it, or offensive to God. And it's like, God can handle all that's in you, Plus, it's not a surprise. Like, you put it on paper, he already saw it in your head and in your heart anyways. Right.
So, Christa, something that I see in you, I've been seeing in you, is that you've really come into your own. I feel like in the last 2 years. And if you guys don't know who Christa Wells is, you need to go to christawells.com. And she's penned songs for people like Ellie, is it Holcomb? Is that what I'm saying, right? Plum, who's one of my favorites, JJ Heller, Natalie Grant. I mean, this girl, she's no joke. Jenny Owens, like, these are songwriters, okay? And she has been in the room with some amazing artists. But you have, and there's this part in the book that says, artists love other artists. Shadow artists are gravitating through this book to, artists love other artists. Shadow artists are gravitating to their rightful tribe, but cannot yet claim their own birthright. I feel like you've gravitated towards other artists, towards your tribe. Yeah. But then in the last 2 years, you weren't just writing songs for other people. I really saw you claim your own birthright. The songs that were coming out of you, the pictures, your Instagram, everything, your whole essence and flow evolved. How did you go from being a shadow artist, because you kind of were a little bit, and hanging out with other singers and songwriters in Nashville and writing for them, into really coming into this, Christa Wells, here's who I am, hello world.
Yeah, and I will say for all of you, none of you probably know me, that what Cherie's talking about is not just that I didn't go from not creating my own music to creating my own music. I have always been creating my own music, but there has been definitely a shift in the presence and the full embodiment of my artist self. And I think it's because everything is connected, right? And so Cherie as an artist is able to create in correlation with Cherie's human, like where she is as a full human being. They're not disconnected really. And so if I am small in my life outside of my artist work, I'm also going to show up small in my work. If I'm not fully honest here, if I'm scared here, I'm going to be scared here. At least that's what feels true to me. So when I went through through family crisis and divorce in the last few years, and my whole entire existence was turned on its head, and I was just forced to show up in a way that I had never been forced to fully show up, because I didn't have this strong other person in the house to like defer to and to be like, well, I can be half a person because you're super strong, so I can be all the, I don't have to grow in some ways. And it's an interesting tangent that the people we are often super drawn to, romantically or otherwise, a lot of times we put them on a pedestal because what we're seeing in them is something in us that wants to be developed,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like I see, that's why we say, often opposites attract, because we see in this person something that's underdeveloped in ourselves. So anyways, when I lost my partner, who was very, had so many gifts that I had not ever developed, it forced me to start showing up and doing this digging out of the shadow. What fears are driving me? And so as I did all this personal healing, it flowed over into my work, and it had to be expressed. And I just, I just think it's all one big thing.
I think that's super interesting. One thing that you said to me that kind of stood out in this book, and in this process of doing the morning pages this morning, and just freely writing, is that freedom to tell the truth, the freedom to say what I feel, what I'm thinking, to not feel like you're going to be judged, to not feel like you're going to just offend someone, to not feel like you're going to ruin a relationship, but you are just free to say who you are. And I think that's the difference that I see, like true artists versus artists that are just trying to get on and trying to be like someone else.
Yep.
Is they're true and they're honest to who they are. And they're not afraid to offend someone. They're not afraid to do anything, like to be honest and tell the truth. And to believe what's interesting as Christian artists, I feel like in the Christian world, I feel like there's so many restrictions. There's so much culture. There's so many boundaries that you are not free to tell the truth. And I think that's what's lacking sometimes in the creative processes, where you're not free to just be honest and to tell the truth. But one thing that as I was doing that this morning, and as I was like free to just feel free to tell the truth, I started to realize in other areas of my life where there's things that I needed to say to certain people that I just don't feel like I could say. And even still, like that part it hasn't really fleshed out of me just yet, but I can see as I go through this process and develop that muscle of just being honest and telling the truth and getting comfortable in that space, I can see how that pours over into other areas of life. But as an artist that's kind of just jumping into this at the very beginning, what has your process been like? Have you felt like you've had to not tell the truth? Have you had to hold some of those things back between how do you find that line of telling the truth and being honest and making the art for yourself and what pleases you, but also understanding that it's a commercial piece that is really designed to serve others? I feel like there's a conundrum there, or maybe there's not. What do you?
Well, I've always had a stubborn streak. So even though I think that's a big part of my clarity and freedom now, is that I'm not at odds with myself like I was for a lot of years. You know what I'm saying? Like when you and I think many people exist in this state forever, and you're just not, you don't know, you can't put a finger on what that low hum of anxiety is. But a lot of that low, like underlying ache or edge is because you're just not in alignment. And so I have experienced that because I have in the past had, like many of you, like, a people pleasing tendency. But when it came to art, I also was really like almost to a fault precious about it. Like, no, I don't want to say that. I don't want to do that. It's dumb. That's not real, And if it doesn't mean something to me, if I don't care about something, I've just never been able to get myself to do it. Like, I don't care how much you pay me. I don't care about it. And my eyes will glaze over. If I try to create from that space, it'll be bad art. Like, it's just, which is why I love working with Cherie, because she's all about tell the true story. And this is what I've really lived. Let's say that. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying. There is that pressure. And the reality is making the choice to tell the truth means you will miss out on some opportunities commercially. Now, I think the opportunities you're going to have are going to be incredible, though, because we underestimate a lot of people. There is the low common denominator that in any genre who just wants catchy and, isn't even listening to the words. I think you help yourself out when you tell the truth, but couple it with really amazing sound, because that's what people want, right? Is something that sounds good. So we cannot compromise on that. And I do feel like the faith circle has compromised on that in the past. And so if we can make it better than anything else they've ever heard, or that's what our aim is, then you're good. And I think on the lyrical side and on the substance side, people ache to hear the truth spoken. They really do want that. And they're so not used to, in any genre, Christian or mainstream, country, hip hop, anything, of having those two things put together, like actual, true, poignant substance with killer sound. If you can do those two things, you're going to absolutely sweep. Like, it's going to be amazing. But it's hard. That's a high bar.
It's a high bar.
Yeah.
In the book, there's two phrases that stuck out to me that go along with what you're saying now. Judging your early artistic effort is artist abuse. So again, going back to that, when you first start, don't judge it. Just let it. That's where truth is going to come from. Truth is not going to come from ego, right? It's just not. It's not going to come from competition. It's going to come from freedom, that George explained, right? And then the next piece says, my creativity, my truth, my creativity in all of its fullness heals myself and others. Could we get to that space, right, where our creativity could heal not only ourselves, but also others?
Yeah.
That's something to strive for. That is a high bar as well.
Yeah, going through this process, I think it's just, man, having that freedom. And I think that kind of going back to what this idea of being able to be in a safe place. I feel like the world is not safe. And when the world pushes out so much fear, whether that's fear of a virus, whether that is fear of police brutality, whether that is fear of this white person is judging me for something, or this black person is thinking that I'm racist and I'm not, or whatever it might be, all these different fears that are just going on, it just decreases our level of creativity, where we're afraid to say, we're even afraid to think our thoughts,
yes,
let alone put them on paper. So I think one of the things that I've found so valuable, especially in this very first chapter, is to adopt this practice each day of doing morning pages, and doing it in the morning. Now, I think everyone has a morning routine. Having a morning routine is the best way to be productive in any type of thing. I realize when I have a morning routine, I'm hitting goal after goal, bar after bar. But when I find myself slacking and just saying, I'm going to stay in bed this one time, and I allow myself to give that one time, then it turns into 2 times, and it turns into 3. And all of a sudden I'm off and I'm not getting anywhere at all. So adding this practice, I believe, is very, very well worth it. I don't think it's definitely not in replacing of my morning routine of like diving into scripture. That's one of the things that I do to connect with the Creator. But right after that, actually opening up the pages and just allowing myself to create and find that freedom, I've already found a lot of healing, and I've already started to see glimmers of hope, of saying, like, I don't have to be stifled by this outside world of fear. I can be in a safe place with just my journal and my pen, and with God, to know that God can handle my truth. God can handle how I feel. He knows how I feel anyway, from the complete most messed up, sinful thoughts that I could possibly think of, or my deepest, darkest fears, or my biggest selfish desires that I want to have. He knows all those things. And I think getting in front of a pad and pen to be able to write those things is extremely, extremely important. And it's a part of the morning routine. I think it's important to do it first thing in the morning. Yes. Do you have a specific morning routine that you do that allows you to get into this space? Is it something that you do intentionally, or have you been doing it so long where you feel like you live in that always?
Having a morning routine has always been important to me. Like I'm a person who highly values peace of mind. And I find I seldom wake up feeling peaceful, which I just read recently, like our cortisol levels, the stress hormone, is highest in the morning, by the way. So if you feel stressed when you wake up and weirdly afraid, that's actually normal, I guess. So I found that having a morning routine helps me to conquer myself the start of the day. And like just all the things you said, like the rest of the day is going to be better if I start by conquering that scared brain, And so my morning routine revolves begins with coffee.
Yeah.
Or brush my teeth, get my coffee. But seriously, I mean, that I joke about that, but I think ritual is good for us as humans. And so even just physical slow acts like making my coffee really matters to me. And so yes, I'm doing the morning pages now. I have not always done it 3 pages of writing. For the last few months, so over time, my morning routine shifts. It's always involved some degree of reading, some form of prayer or meditation or prayerful meditation, some form of writing. Sometimes that's a journal, sometimes it's poetry, sometimes it's morning pages. So yeah, but it's really important. And I think also another great gift, like you were talking about how what you're doing is creating a safe space for yourself. And I think another reason psychologically why that really affects us is we want to feel safe. We want to belong. If we don't give that to ourselves between us and God, first thing in the day, we're going to spend the rest of the day chasing other people to give that to us. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be feeling fearful in the world because we're like, why aren't you making me feel safe? Why don't you make me feel like I belong? Yeah. Right? And instead of going, I already feel, I think it's Maya Angelou actually, who I heard say, Maya belongs to Maya. Like, and once you have that, it's like, I'm good. I kind of feel unstoppable in a way.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what this commitment is that we're asking people to take on with us, George, is make time for yourself. Do you belong to yourself? As artists, we are constantly in front of other people and thinking through, how is this going to sound to other people? How's this show going to feel to other people? Is anybody else going to want to buy this t-shirt? All this stuff. And we're not taking time to be like, yo, what about me? What does Cherie need? What does Chris need? What does George need? Maya belongs to Maya. Cherie belongs to Cherie. Christa belongs to Christa. George belongs to George. I think that's an awesome way of starting out. Now, you talked about this brain in the morning. I really love learning about the brain. And you talked about that when we wake up, that's when our anxiety is the highest. That's when fear is the highest. That's when all this stuff is peaking. And there's again a quote in the book that says that the morning pages minimize our sensor. And it says that sensor is a part of our leftover survival brain. I love that. Like, think about the day before. Like, you're just trying to survive, right? You're just trying to survive. And you wake up in the morning, that's still there. It's like the leftovers are still there, trying to censor. And so when you sit down and you say, Cherie, you belong to Cherie right now, it says it minimizes that sensor that's trying to survive. And then you have to understand too, that when you first start writing, the first words that come out of your morning pages may seem dangerous. Like, where did that come from? And that's okay. Because eventually, as you begin to tame that sensor, it will begin to minimize more and more and more and more. And then you really are flowing from your true self.
Yes.
Yeah, I think just going through this morning pages is one, you start out and you start out feeling like this is awkward. And I hope this works, or this is just another, I kind of like, how people that are trying to lose weight, this is just another diet. This is probably not going to work. Done this before. I'm going to try it again, but it's probably not going to work. It starts out that way. But as you start to go through it, you start to feel like, oh, you know what? Yeah, nobody else is going to read this but me and God. Like, I can say what I want to say. And you start to write about those things. But then all of a sudden you feel like you're on this roller coaster because you see that you have these, a page and a half that's blank left, and you literally have no idea where it's going to go. But your mind is like taking you on this roller coaster, and you're like, wow, I don't know how I ended up on this bunny trail, because we're always taught to just kind of stay focused. But there's a time where you don't have to stay focused. Mm-hmm. You can go and explore every single bunny trail, uncover every rock, stop. And like when you try to walk in the grass and your dog just stops to smell and pee on everything, that's kind of how I feel when I was doing the morning pages. I'm going to stop over here and sniff that. I'm going to stop over there, pee on that. And I don't know. I don't even know where that came from. Like, that was
getting crazy and kind of sharing our bunny trails. I had a bunny trail thought that was interesting. I'm going to share just for entertainment, pure entertainment. Ready, guys? But have you ever thought about Teslas? I just got into this stream and thought, like, what if a Tesla, like, I really went crazy. What if Teslas are actually controlled by people? And what if we are all in Teslas 10 years from now? And then all of a sudden, whoever these people are, lock us in the car and we're stuck in our Teslas going to a destination that we don't want to go to and we can't get out. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh, it's like a conspiracy theory that's on YouTube or something like.
But it can be that crazy, and I just expose my mind with you.
I love it. I'm just saying, like that's certainly going to be a YouTube video. Someone's going to take that and like that's going to be a whole conspiracy.
A whole movie, a short film.
or we could analyze it. And be like, ooh, what does this represent in your mind? What is the metaphor here? That's what my kids always. I always do that with people's dreams. I'm like, okay, what if you are everything in your dream is actually a part of you? Then what does it mean? And my kids are like, stop.
See, when you tell that to other people, you sound crazy, but when you're doing it in your morning pages, you're free to just think. And no one's going to think you're in the Illuminati because you just think something crazy.
All right.
Oh, man.
Thank you, Christa, so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Now, where can people find you?
I have a website, christawellsmusic.com. As far as social media, I'm on the main ones, but mainly Instagram more than the others.
Okay, awesome. And then you also are a full-time artist, right? And you have patrons. So how do we support you?
Patreon.com is great. I love that little tribe. It really keeps me writing because it's accountability again. You know, I say I'm going to do this every month. I'm going to give you some new music. So it's like $2 a month to hear a new song every month. So, and that means a lot. It's very helpful for me mentally.
That sounds like a whole other conversation about accountability and tribes and stuff like that we can have later. So,
in addition, you have the book study going on, and you have invited people that they can tune in to the book study if they want to hear more. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not
open to the public. I don't know.
Okay. We're not streaming it, but I think there's still some spots to register if you want. So you can just contact me or Cherie or. Yeah. However you guys do contact here, I'm sure.
Slide into Christa's DMs on Instagram and you can connect with her. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Christa.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sister. Take care.
So I'm super excited about the next 12 weeks where we'll be going through this Artist's Way chapter by chapter. And if you want to join us in this whole process, going through this from the morning pages all the way through each step and each activity in this book, I will send a link in the comments down below. But if you want to be a part of the Jam the Hype Society and walk through this process with us, make sure that you shoot me an email at jamthehype@uiwi.org. Of course, I'll give you the email in the comments as well. So shoot me an email so you can get an invite to our private group at the Jam the Hype Society, and we'll go through and become unblocked as artists together.
And also join us on Talkback Tuesdays on Instagram.
Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Hit the bell icon if you're on YouTube so you can get all the notifications on when we upload new videos. We're live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. Pacific. But we'll see you guys again next week. Peace.
Peace.